Hi, my name is Caitlin Todd. Throughout the duration of this leadership course, I have been studying the servant leadership style. In this presentation, I will first summarize and explain the servant leadership model. I will then discuss how the servant leadership model relates to both organizational leadership and leading through change. I will further explain why the servant leadership model is important in higher education and how it realistically manifests in leading students within higher education institutions. One article that I read said that leadership can be defined by what the leader does rather than by discussing some abstract concept of leadership. The religious leader, according to much of the Bible, responds to a call to action. This call to action is the call to service. The servanthood of a leader takes the front seat in comparison to the leader's ability to lead in the traditional and abstract concept of leadership. The concept of a call to service first before a call to leadership is the servant leadership model. It is important to know who Robert Greenleaf is and why he is an important part of discussions in regard to servant leadership. Robert Greenleaf is the man who first defined the term servant leader and wrote about its implications for individuals, organizations, and societies. Greenleaf's leadership style and life work was characterized by three themes: servant, seeker, and leader. Greenleaf's works were instrumental in the growth of the servant leadership approach. Servant leaders are servants first and leaders second. The core idea of servant leadership is quite simple. Authentic, ethical leaders, those whom we trust and want to follow, are servants first. Those who are naturally servants first are also inclined to listen first. Greenleaf said that only a true natural servant automatically responds to any problem by listening. Greenleaf also said that leaders' skills such as communicating and decision-making need to be reinforced by a deep commitment to listening intently to others. Servant leaders' desire to listen and empathize with others should naturally transition into a desire and commitment to foster growth among individuals as well as create community. Caring is a fundamental characteristic of community building through relationships. Leaders' commitment to the growth and development of people is central to the philosophy of servant leadership. Servant leadership is a follower-focused approach to leadership. Because servant leaders are most concerned about meeting the needs of those they are leading, it was fairly simple to determine that the human resource frame was the frame that best fit the servant leadership model. The human resource frame is constructed on the idea that people and organizations need each other, and organizations exist to serve human needs rather than the converse. The human resource frame embraces the individual's needs over the needs of the company. The human resource frame also suggests that if institutions prioritize and meet the needs of individuals, then the needs of the institutions will be met because of the hard work of individuals. Bowman and Deal talk about how organizations that operate in accordance to the ideals of the human resource frame implement a variety of high involvement strategies for improving human resource management. Some of these strategies include promoting from within, investing in employees, and empowering employees. When organizations promote employees from within, rather than filling a management position with someone from outside, organizations are serving and supporting their employees. Organizations that see the value and invest in their employees experience the rewards of their investment. Along with investing in their employees' development and growth, progressive organizations can empower their employees. Empowering employees means giving them work that offers opportunities for autonomy, influence, and intrinsic rewards. These strategies motivate employees to be more productive, innovative, and willing to go out of their way to get the job done. When put into action, these strategies are avenues in which leaders can serve employees. Servant leadership is intentional in fostering change in organizations and followers. Servant leaders are a great aid to organizations in stages of change and transformation because they do what needs to be done. They will be diligent throughout the phases of change and do what it takes to implement change. Servant leaders' main goal of meeting the needs of their followers proves to be extremely valuable in times of change. Servant leaders will not hesitate to spend the time, money, and energy in developing and including their followers in times of transformation and change. Servant leaders develop loyalty and trust within those following and working for them. It is extremely beneficial in phases of change and transition that servant leaders have such great relationships with their followers. Followers will be more willing to support changes even if the change is uncomfortable and not ideal. Because servant leaders are concerned with meeting the needs of others, they desire to fulfill the needs of their supervisor and the organization by doing their job well. One article that I read said that a servant leader stands in sharp contrast to the person who wants to be a leader first and then, after clawing his or her way to the top, decides to perform acts of service. Servant leaders are not pining for their supervisor's job. They want what is best for the organization and what is best for their supervisor. Servant leaders feel the call to serve before the call to lead. Servant leaders also face challenges in the process of change. Bowman and Deal talk about how change disrupts existing patterns of roles and relationships, producing confusion and uncertainty. The servant leadership model focuses on the relationships between the leader and followers. This creates a challenge for the servant leader who is focused on these relationships. Also, the servant leadership model does not focus on the objectives or outcomes of the leadership process, but rather the relationship between the leader and the follower, and the responsibility that the leader has to the follower. Because the servant leadership model does not focus on objectives or outcomes, it can be difficult to measure developments and progress. Throughout times of transition and change, it is important to measure progress. This can be challenging within the servant leadership model. While there is not much literature that directly connects servant leadership to higher education, I did read one article that connected servant leadership to academic advising. While this article was very specific to academic advising, it holds many principles that can be related to other departments within higher education. Robert Greenleaf, the man who is known for having coined the term servant leader, was actually a critic of traditional institutions of higher education. Greenleaf spent a lot of time actively seeking to make changes in the world of higher education. He desired to see institutions that were filled with leaders who were servants first. Greenleaf strived to serve higher education institutions by developing programs and practices that nurtured the desire and capacity to become servant leaders in administrators and students. My favorite connection to higher education came from an article I read by E. Grady Bogue that challenges institutions of higher education by saying that if higher education leaders hope to advance their effectiveness, they should embrace the vision of leader as servant and discover the constructive power of empathy and integrity. Thank you for your time in viewing and listening to my presentation about the servant leadership model. I hope that you were able to take away beneficial knowledge that is applicable to higher education that you did not know before. To view my resources and a summary of this presentation, reference the attached handout. Thank you again for your time.